VeeFam, what's up? My name is Mr. Messer, but you can call me Rob, and I am so pumped to be here with the one, the only uh, co-founder and host of the VeeDads show and podcast and Daily Dads, a VeeFriend, registered nurse, and all-star dad, Mr. Blaze Hirsch. Blaze, what's up? How are you? Thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. I'm doing well. I'm glad to be here. Vibes are high. Nationals coming up this weekend, and we have VeeCon in 2 weeks. And we're just rolling. It's summer. There's 10 weeks of summer for my kids, five down, five to go, and every day's an adventure with that. So
Halftime. That's a scary game. I to do the whole like numbers countdown. As a teacher and parent, I stopped doing that just because it's super scary. But yeah, how is your summer going? Because I feel like you're like you guys are really cranking with the content. We'll get into that,
if
but like you're in it as a parent, you're in it as a content creator. Like how are you?
it's definitely a lot of time management, and from like the pros are it's making me be more intentful, if that's a word, and disciplined with my time. Because it's like we're trying to do the Daily Dad show every day at 8:30,
Mm,
and like the cool thing is like if there's a morning I can't do it or a morning that Ryan can't do it, like we're pitching in. And I think there was one morning that like neither of us could do it, and like Dom out in California jumped in and did it. Excuse me. So that is tough, but also like I get a lot of enjoyment out of it. Um, but I'm starting to figure out like what I can and can't do because we were trying to do the daily dads every day and do our 3 p.m. spaces on Tuesday and do Vino dads like once a month on Fridays. And so I think we made the decision this week to put a hiatus on the 3 p.m. show on Tuesdays, which we had a pretty good turnout. Usually like 10, 15 people will jump in and out, which is awesome. But just with summer and the kids and like my teaching stuff and Ryan's moving offices, we're taking a break. But and it's
mm.
national and VCon.
It is VFam summer. Before we get too deep, I'm notorious for forgetting to say exactly what I want to say, so I'm going to front load it. I'm not going
Let's
to
do
try to
it.
time it perfectly, but I freaking love what you guys are doing.
Oh,
Like
thanks, man.
I told Ryan when Ryan was on, I told it Ryan a few times, but I just think you guys, what your show is just one of the most important shows that are being put out in this community, podcast included, and I really mean that just because the ripple effects that the conversations that you're curating will have is just um, infinite and super important. And I just want to say that. And I listen in from time to time. The between the 3 p.m. show and the morning shows, it's not the optimal time for me to get on and like just be totally active in it. But I listen in often and really really big fan. And I just can't wait to see what you guys turn this into for
Oh,
real.
thanks,
So
man.
wanted to front load that before I forget. Um, yeah, so like gotta hand it to you. I know, believe me, firsthand, it's super hard to be raising young kids and period. Never mind,
Mhm.
comma, doing this show, comma, doing that show, comma, holding a job, comma, like being married and being present
Oh,
with
yeah.
that. Gotta hand it to you. We'll circle back to V Dads and that whole movement, but I always like to start this show taking some steps back. So, can you give everybody, all the listeners, a quick 55-second cliff notes on who Blaze Hirsch is before you ever even heard the name Gary V?
Yeah. So I'm like in my opinion, is still like a Gary B newbie. Like I stumbled upon Gary probably like the same times that I stumbled upon VeeFriends. Whereas I know like listening to a lot of VeeFam sessions, like a lot of people they were like following Gary for a while and then they got into VeeFriends, which Gary's been like cranking out stuff for like 12, 15 years. Um, and so because he started his stuff when he was around like I think 32, 33. I'm 36. And so I always think like, man, like I am still young. I can still like do the daily dads or something like that. But so I've been a nurse for 14 years, and so I've always been doing healthcare. Um, I think I'm one of the, I don't want to say few nurses, but I feel like nursing is often like a second thought or a second idea for people because I know a lot of people that do like marketing or they're not sure what they want to do in college, they don't finish college, and then when they're like 25, 26, they're like, you know what? Somebody suggested I should check nursing out. I'm going to do nursing. But I knew since I was 16 years old, I wanted to be a nurse. I wanted to help people, I wanted to care for people, job security. And so at 16, I made that decision, started nursing school at 18, had my BSN at 22. And then I've worked at 5 different hospital systems over 3 different states over the past 14 years, from bedside nursing to leadership for 7 years. And then now I'm teaching. So I've done like a ton of different stuff in nursing. And we do the Daily Dad Show. One thing that I'd like love to do professionally at some point is like a nursing podcast or some kind of like nursing Web3 / consulting thing one day. But I was so focused on nursing and nursing leadership and being on call 24/7, 365. I went to VeeCon last year and Gary said, quit your job if you hate it. He said it like 3 times and there was like 10 people still standing up. And I was one of those people. I'm like, I got to go quit my job. Gary told me to go quit my job. And so I was already teaching part-time and I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to go teach full-time. And since I made that decision almost a year ago, like I've been getting to spend so much more time with my kids. I've been getting to like work on hobbies again. I feel like I have like part of my life back. And like I love nursing. I love nursing leadership. I just couldn't find the balance that my family needed for me to be present. And so now that's where I am right now.
That's amazing. I didn't know that at all. And there's a lot to that as a guy with a family to just to take that leap. Um, how how long were you like sitting on it? Like, was it just the VCon, or like how long was it really like I'm on this ledge, I'm gonna jump?
Before I like dig like super deep into it, like the one thing that like I have to say is like my wife has been working really hard building her own business.
Mm,
And so like 18 months ago, we moved from like Boston, Massachusetts to Rochester, New York, because with the 3 kids that we brought into this world over those 6 years before we moved here, um, we love them, but being in Boston, we didn't have any family. And so we really just wanted them to not just see their family on the holidays, but actually like have relationships with them. And so that's why we moved to Rochester. And it was a really hard transition for me because basically my salary got cut by like 45%. And like the cost of living Boston, Massachusetts compared to Rochester, New York is much lower. But it's kind of like that old stigma, like how much money you make like defines you as a person. And like I'm I'm getting farther and farther away from that every day. And do I want to make more money? Yeah. Like but I don't want it all to be from like nursing. And now that and so when we moved here, my wife was working with a startup and she's like, you know what, I could do this by myself. And so she broke off, she started her own company. She is doing like phenomenally. And if she wasn't doing that, I don't think I'd have the opportunity to like take a step down and take another pay cut to teaching. But now I'm like having some different things coming in my lens or to me that are awesome. So I want to say my wife's awesome. Think she's the best. Um, but I think that moving from Rochester, New York, like I have a picture of what nursing should be. And as a nursing leader, I didn't feel that I was put in a position to lead it the way that I wanted to. Um, and so I was like really chewing on it for a while that like, man, I don't know if I'm in the right position to support my staff and support my family. And I started teaching part-time and I'm like, you know, like I'm really enjoying teaching and like getting to see nurses before they take that test and they start working on the floor. And there's a lot of, I think there's burnout everywhere, but there's especially a lot of burnout in nursing. And so I'm trying to think like, not only am I teaching people to be nurses, but could I give them this positive impact too? That's like, you have to take care of yourself. You have to know how to
mm,
say no. Like
so crucial.
one of the big things that somebody told me once is like, you're the CEO of yourself. Like you're the CEO of your name. And so like that really like resonated deeply with me. So that's something that I really try to establish with my students is like, if you don't like a job, there's 1,000 other jobs that you can have as a nurse. Like you do not have to go to work and suffer every single day. And like, because I was to the point where like I was like sitting in my car and like I had to like push myself to like unbuckle my seatbelt and like drag my feet into the door. And I'm like, this isn't good for where I'm working at, the team that I'm working with, or for my family. So why am I doing this? And I think like Gary just gave me that like confidence and push to be like, you know what, like there is so many different things that you can be doing out there. And I think that since I've made that break, it's like I could be doing the daily dads, like I could be doing a little bit of consulting, I could be flipping more on eBay. A couple weeks ago, like I opened my first booth at an antique store selling like comic books and video games and like Funko Pops
Oh, nice.
just for fun. Like, cause the joke that I don't know if you've ever heard me say this, but like every time I sell a comic book, I think my wife loves me a little bit more. Cause we always talk about like, did you marry the person or did you marry the idea of the person? And the ideal person that my wife married, I don't think she realized that like I liked comic books and I might accumulate like 10,000 over 5 years. But I'm not buying any more, Heather, for the most part. So there you go.
That's so funny. It reminds me, I think there's like this Instagram or TikTok trend, like how I know my husband's not cheating. And it's like exactly what you're saying, like fiddling with the Funko Pops or like,
uh,
categorizing comics or baseball cards, whatever. It's pretty funny. That's so cool. Like so you have made a lot of pivots and a lot of life changes. As far as, by the way, like just because I've lived it, did you always have this kind of entrepreneurial spirit, like opening up booths and flipping, or is it like now like you're more into this like Gary V Friends ecosystem where that's more of the culture? Just out of curiosity.
um, so I think that it was planted in me at a very young age, kind of. I think my dad did a lot of different things, and like ultimately he's in sales. Like he used to sell cars, and then he sold electric cars before Tesla, and now he does like stuff with like power transformers. And he's been doing that for like 30 years. Not like the toy transformers, but like on the like power lines and stuff like that. Um, but I remember at an early age, like my uncle started selling stuff on eBay when like eBay was new. And I thought that was like so cool that you could just like pick up something in your house or like pick up something in a garage sale and like flip it online. And so like that's what really like sparked my interest in that at a young age. And I remember like going to GameStop and like buying games and trying to sell them online. And like I was not successful whatsoever. Um, but I think over the past like a little bit before I got into Gary Vee, I started doing that. But now even more now with like hashtag flip life and all that stuff, I think it's like even like a bigger motivator. Um, but from the other perspective, like my wife's always talking about like how much is your time worth? How much are you making off of this stuff? So like for example, like I sold one of my son's t-shirts that he doesn't wear anymore, that doesn't fit him anymore for like $10 on eBay today, and I forgot to do the shipping. So like I probably put like an hour work into this and I got like a $3 profit before taxes. So
Hmm.
I'm not like, that's one thing I'm always thinking about is like the ROIs on that. I need to be a better flipper, blah, blah, blah. But um, from the other perspective, like there's the gamification piece on eBay that I think is like really cool, where it's like my goal for this year is to get to 1,000 items sold and 500 positive feedbacks, and I'm at like 431 positive feedbacks, and I've sold 636 items in my lifetime on eBay. So I really need to like hit the grindstone if I want to meet my goal. But I think there's that like gamification piece too.
Yeah, you're almost there. That's awesome.
Thanks,
That's
man.
awesome. Yeah, I'm eBay in auctions, Yahoo auctions. That's how I got my start.
There you go.
I'm dating myself. But it has always been a part of me, and it's just like you say, like gamification, and there's seasons to it. Like I've never gone like full time. But it's fun. It's always like in the background, and it just like my baseline. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's always on my radar. Amazing. So you said you were late to the party, still early, but late to the party as far as the Gary timeline. VeeFriends 2021 Web3. You've mentioned like in your bio it says Web3 nurse. You've already kind of alluded to Web3. Talk to me about you finding VeeFriends and how your relationship with Web3, what you saw in it then, how you feel about it now, how do you incorporate it into your life? Just I'll let you go wherever you want to take that, but I'm very curious because there's so Web3 is going to touch everything. It pretty much has, but Web3 nurse is not something that we probably is going to come to front of mind initially. So I'd love to hear you jam on that from your perspective.
Yeah, so I think it's like a work in progress, an aspiration, um, and something that I would want to like build more towards. Because probably 90% of what nurses do, and again, like that's just like a ballpark figure, it's like I would say is taking care of sick people. Nobody goes to the hospital and is admitted that is healthy. And I'd say that 90% of the time. There's some like elective surgery for like cosmetics and stuff that like people go to the hospital for. And like, I don't think those people are sick. I think they're just working on something. But it's like you break your arm, you have an infection. I don't think pregnant people are sick either. They're just having a baby and we make sure the baby's healthy. Some people do home births. There you go. But from the Web3 aspect, so I think like everything for me like started with crypto. And no, that's not true. I think what got me like curious with NFTs was NBA Top Shot, and I think NBA Top Shot was an entry point for a lot of people.
Sure, yeah.
And I remember like reading this article about this guy that made like $100,000 or $1 million like flipping moments on NBA Top Shot, and I'm like, that's what like got me like curious about like NFTs. And so at one point, I think I had like 2,000 moments on the Top Shot or something like that. Now I have zero, and I didn't get out where I could have made like a ton of money, but I got it at a point where like I lost less money than other people. Um, and so got out of that. And then this was around the time that like Elon Musk was like really like pushing Dogecoin
Yep.
when he's going to be on Saturday Night Live. And I'm like, man, I'm going to buy a bunch of Dogecoin. I'm going to be rich. But the only trading platform I had was Robinhood. And this is when Robinhood was just getting into crypto. I don't know how it is now because I didn't use the app in like a year and a half. But I remember loading up a bunch of money on Robinhood. I'm like, I'm gonna buy this Dogecoin. I'm gonna be rich. But then like the money sat there for like a week because you have like once you put this money into Robinhood, you had to wait like a week to access it. And so like by the
Mm.
time that it cleared, like Dogecoin had doubled, but I still put my money in. And there was like one day where I was up like 200, 300%. And I'm like, I'm rich. This is awesome. And then the next day it started going down and down and down and down. And I didn't understand that with cryptocurrencies, like how quickly especially with meme coins, like you have like that day sometimes to sell or that minute or
Yep.
that hour. And so I'm like, okay, I need to cash out of this. And then this is right around when V2s were minting. And like, I was still like new to Twitter. And I just remember people posting about book games. And I'm like, oh, this is really cool. And I missed out on like buying books and getting them. And I'm like, and I saw like what V1s were going for. So I'm like, I need to get some V2s. So I started getting book games and like I jumped on like that's when I started like seeing like ads for like VeeFriends. Actually, what first got me in was these Walking Dead NFTs because I love the Walking Dead, and they're kind of trash now. But
Yeah, I
um,
didn't know they had a project. That's interesting.
so it was called the Walking Dead Pass, and it was supposed to be like a Web3 gaming thing where they gave you like they were supposed to give you I can't remember if it was 10 airdrops or 6 or something like that, but it was like buy this pass, you're gonna have access to this game, you're gonna get a bunch of airdrops. And I'm like, oh, airdrops, that sounds awesome, free stuff. So I got that, and it was kind of cool for like a year or so, but then it's lackluster. I mean, I still hold them and stuff, but then it was like, okay, I gotta get some V2s. So I got the book games. I minted the energetic electric eel, a protected panther, and a gentle giant. And I'm like, all right, Protective Panther, that's a rookie character. These other two characters, okay, cool. And then, so the position that I'm in right now, this is probably like my like 10th or 11th role in 7 years. So I've done like so many different things across so many different hospitals. And every time that I've left, people have been like, we're going to miss your energy. We're going to miss your energy. We're going to miss your energy. So I thought like, man, how like serendipitous. Like we have this energetic electric eel in the competitive stance. Um, and
Nice.
he, and so I'm like, this is my character. So I remember I got like dinner with Ryan and Jeremy before VeeDads or anything else, and I'm still like making VeeFriends. This is in New York City last year. And Jeremy's like, "Who's your character?" And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not advertising this enough. Like I need to double down on the energetic electric eel. Like people don't know that like that's my character. Um, and so I hope to get a V1 at one point, but um, I ended up I invested in a couple of other projects that are probably at zero now, and I think overall I'm in a loss and still recovering from that Dogecoin thing like 2 or 3 years ago. But that's going down and not up, and I almost tell myself internally that that was my buy-in to be part of this community. And I'm sure people have had much, much, much smaller buy-ins, but I know people that have had much, much larger buy-ins as well. Um, and I think that's like business, and there's so many lessons that we learn there. But that's kind of like my crypto journey.
Well, number one, thank you for sharing. Two,
Yeah.
your investment to be part of this community is something much more than anything monetarily. Like,
Oh yeah.
not to be so redundant, but like the effort and the resources and the information and the perspective and the intelligence that you're injecting through your content is like not everyone does that. Like you can count all of the shows that go through this community on one or two hands. So
Oh yeah.
like you're leaving your impression and it's growing every day. So I wanted to put that on wax right
Oh,
there.
thank you.
Um, and yeah, I saw the electric eel. Did I see you tweet at Gary or something that you were trying to get his like
Oh yeah.
one go?
Because no one's selling them right now, and like the floor is I think like 2,700, and so I'm like, man, like what can I move around to get there? Um, so I think with some of the stuff I'm doing right now, I
I'm
hope
only
to.
bringing this up because I want to be able to clip it when you actually get it.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm hoping like it's something that I can pull the trigger on in the next year, but like I need to meet my like financial goals first and then see like where things are at. Um, I think that after this VeeCon, prices will go up or they'll go down. I mean, every day prices could go up or go down, but I think
Yeah.
it'll be very curious to see like, is this the last VeeCon? Will VeeFriends tokens still be entry to future VeeCons? Will it even be called VeeCon in the future? I don't know, blah blah blah. But so I'm hopeful.
Yeah, I mean, USD, just looking at the price in dollars versus 2 years ago is insane. Like I remember like doing math out like how are we gonna come up with 40 grand
Yeah.
to get a core V1? Um, and it's not long ago. Like we're talking two
No.
years.
Well,
So we've come a long way.
the crazy story that I have for that, and I'm so thankful that I didn't do this, is when we moved to Boston, from Boston to Rochester, like we had like a lot of equity in our house. And it's crazy because in Boston, we lived in like a 120-year-old house with termite damage, and that house was not even half the size of what our house is now. And the house we live in now is still cheaper than the other house, which is like just blows my mind. Like location, location, location. And this house is like 30 years old. But I remember selling the house and be like, okay, because I don't do the money in my family. My wife does all the money. Like I have no idea where any of our money. I mean, I have an idea where money goes, but I'm not like counting the dollars and cents, except for like my private debt for like all this stuff that I'm doing. But I remember like, okay, how can I ask my wife for $40,000 to buy this V1? And I think about like, what if I did convince her to do that, and like prices are where they're at now, and like I don't really care about like floor price or anything like that, but I think my wife would care a lot if we took like $40,000 from selling that house that could have been her new kitchen or go towards a
Sure.
pool or something
Yeah,
like that.
it's a
Um,
conversation.
yeah, so lots of what ifs because it's like, well, what if I would have never spent that money and then I wouldn't have like any crypto debt? But then from the other perspective, it's like, what if I did something like that? So it's just always interesting to like hindsight and stuff like that.
Hmm. Here's a question for you on that note. And a lot of people are in this bucket, but there's a lot of people that could be related to it too. Like you obviously spend a lot of time, you're a busy guy, but you spend a lot of time in this community
Oh yeah,
creating content, consuming other content, going to events, uh, you know, budgeting dollars to go to do all these things. Like I guess it's a twofold question. Like, where does she sit on this like thing that you're spending so much time in, like slash like her understanding, and like what for the person that's like trying to get their significant other, wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, baby best friend, mom, brother, like how did you go about finding that understanding to come to that place?
I mean, that's such a good question because, like, let's say I consider myself like 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10 into VeeFriends. Um, Whereas like my wife is probably like 1 out of 10 or lower. Like,
Ooh, 0.55.
yeah, or maybe like a 2 out of 10, just because like I'm so vested in the community.
Yeah, she's
Um,
got to level up.
yeah, so, but she is a Gary fan. Like, she reads
Okay.
Gary's books and like we talk about Gary and stuff. Like, I don't even think that she could name like one VeeFriend character. Maybe she could name one VeeFriend character. Now my kids, on the other hand, they all have their favorite characters. They're like poppin' minis. Like, I have one of those vending machines in my garage that I still haven't worked something out with, but I don't even know if I can now because my kids keep going to the box and I keep going and finding like VeeFriends minis wrappers in like the garage and my kids' room, and like today my son's like, "Dad, I got you a present," and I'm like, "Oh, what'd you get me, Bryson?" And he's like, "Look," and he holds up like a gold blobfish from like the VeeFriends minis because he knows I like the gold ones and the sparkly ones are significant. And I'm like, "Oh, thanks, buddy." Like, we still can't find the Flex and Fox, uh, the sparkly gold blue one, because like my wife like hates things, and so I'm pretty sure she like vacuumed a bunch of them up and threw them away. But that's the life that I live. Um, so I think that if it was just like the NFTs and the merch and all this stuff, I think that I'm not sure where we'd be, but she knows that like I'm doing this daily show, and I think she's still trying to gain understanding around it because like she's like a businesswoman and she runs her own business, and she's like, okay, you're spending all this time, like, are you making any money on this? And I'm like, no, like there's potential in the future because I mean because you could take it in any direction. Like, maybe we could be consulting for dad stuff one day, maybe we'll get sponsors one day, maybe we'll
Mm,
finally hit 50 followers on Twitch and do subscribers. But like, I mean, I don't know, but at the end of the day, I think that she sees that like or at least I feel this way, that I'd be becoming a better father because we're talking about this stuff daily about
yeah.
how can I have a better relationship with my kids and guide them. I think I messed up because because me and Ryan, I think we've been doing this show for like almost 60 days or 65 or something like that. And my wife's like, okay, I'm gonna listen to an episode. I'm like, oh man, sweetie, I love you, baby. That means so much to me. And then the episode that she listens to is like the one where me and Ryan are trying watermelon donuts from Dunkin' Donuts, and she's like, do you guys always eat stuff and try it, or like I was just like really confused. Like, you were talking about like taste and flavor, and like, so I think I turned her off. But
Amazing.
I
Well,
think
you
yeah,
need to do a proper compilation
yeah.
of your greatest hits because you guys have some great moments.
Oh, thanks, man.
Um,
Me and Ryan talk about it all the time. We're just sitting on like mountains of content because, like, I mean, if you think about it, like whatever 60 times 30 is, what is that, 1800? So we're sitting on more than 1800 minutes of content, and like I we're still trying to find the flow of like how do we splice this up and spit it out with everything else that we're doing too. So
it adds
definitely,
up fast.
yeah.
It adds up fast. Like, yeah, I'm living that reality of like missed opportunity land, and like look at all that I have. But keep on cranking.
Oh, thanks, man.
With that said, like I feel like I feel like we're like chatting at like by a campfire or at a bar, like
That's how it should.
absolutely. And I could do it all night. But for historical purposes, I want to go back. I want to backpedal a little bit. When did you like hit that moment, like for V Friends, like when you were like, "Oh, I really get this. I see the vision, and I'm, you obviously at some point connected the parent thing. Like this is going to be, this is geared towards kids, or a substantial portion of these characters and storylines and merchandise or whatever are going to be geared towards kids. Parents fit in. I want to hear the whole story of when it connected for you, and then when VeeDads or meeting Ryan or whatever the order was. I would love to hear the origin story of how all that came to be.
Absolutely. Um, so my like, so I'm into the V2s. What was that? That was almost 2.5 years
22.
ago.
Yep.
Um, and then I remember just like dropping in and listening to a bunch of spaces. And I remember like I jump into a lot of Jeremy's spaces, and I don't see him that active in the community anymore. I think he's doing a lot of stuff with like AI gaming. Um, he's in Boston. Davey?
Dav?
Dav, yeah, Dav.
Yep.
Um, and I just remember thinking like, man, like they're just V friends like hanging out in spaces and they talk to each other like they're like really good friends. And I'm like, that's really cool. Like I'm like, I want some friends like that. And I hated living in Boston. Um, no family, no place to park. Everything's really expensive. We have this old house. I did enjoy my job for the most part, um, but I just didn't think there was like that much opportunity for my kids and activities. And so I think that's why I got like so deeply into comic books, just because needed some kind of outlet. And then like linking into VeeFriends, I'm like, oh, this is cool. Like I should check out this more. So, but eventually we moved from Boston to Rochester for my wife's job to be closer to family. And then I think I started to like, I had my V2s, I opened the cards. And I'm always salty because like before, like everyone was talking about the cards on Twitter, like I remember like sitting in my house ripping my 3 boxes by myself. And like I ripped a bubblegum one of one outgoing octopus. And I'm like, this is really cool. But I didn't have anybody to share it with. I think I did
Yeah.
end up selling it on
A
eBay for,
random Tuesday afternoon in your living
yeah.
room. Right.
And I think I did end up selling it on eBay for like 1,200 bucks or something like that, which I think's still a good price for that.
Sure.
Um, but I think I also sold an accountable ant for like $40, which
Uh,
I
that's an
did.
L.
Yeah, I didn't know anything
Well,
about.
on July 24th, 2024, that's an L.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Um, but so anyways, I'm like, okay, I have these V2s. VeeCon's in Indianapolis. I'm in Rochester. Like, I want to go to VeeCon. I, I've been like following people on Twitter and like being a little bit active, but like not posting daily, just like dropping in here and there. And so I'm like, I don't have any friends though. Like people go and hang out with friends. So I'm like, what should I do? Because I don't have any V friends. And like I try to like butter up, I think people a little bit online, but I didn't feel like I was fitting in then. And so I don't really go on Discord anymore, but I was lightly active in the Discord, and they sent out the volunteer applications, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna be a volunteer. And so they greenlit me to be a volunteer, and so I volunteered at the last VeeCon, which was absolutely awesome. I spent like a bunch of time in the VeeFriends Museum. Did you go last? You haven't been to VeeCon, have you?
I've been every year.
Oh, yeah, well, now I'm embarrassed. I insulted you on your show. Guys, don't hold it against me.
I'm not. It's gonna take a lot more than that to insult me.
But I was in the VeeFriends Museum for like 2 days, and I just got to meet like so many cool people. Like, I
Oh,
think
nice.
there's the first people that I met were Joe Animal, and she's from Cleveland, and like I love Cleveland. Like if some of the shows I've done, like if some like I interviewed NFT Bark a while ago, and like he's from Cleveland, and so I'm like all I want to talk about is Cleveland. But so Joe Animal, you know Joe Animal, like she's just like the nicest person. I think she's like hosting like she has a hostel now. She's hosting like 10 people for the national, which I think is awesome. Um, and then I think there was Brittany Mass that I met too. I don't know if you know her or not, but she's like into
Yeah.
Flip Life and on Twitter. And so I'm making all these friends. And I think there was one person I met who's a dad, and I think we were joking around about VeeDads, and nothing ever came of it. Because if you search the VeeDads hashtag on Twitter, like something pops up from like 2 or 3 years ago where someone was just like casually dropping it.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And so I had brought it up to somebody before, and like just the conversation didn't really happen. And then fast forward to New York City for Christmas. I think that's when I met Ryan in person for the second time, because we met at the card show, or not the card show, the comic book convention, NYCC, in the fall, and we traded
Yep.
Arcana cards
Yeah.
for VeeFriend shoes. And then like Gary was. This is when Gary was like every other post was about Little Maven. The Maven. It's like, come check out
Mm.
Little Maven. Little Maven. I'm drinking there. I'm hanging out. Come and eat food. It's the best. Say my name. Get a drink. And so we did a dinner with some V friends at there. And so like I got to sit down with Jeremy for the first time. Ryan was there. I love Kowski. Kowski. I'm like when I met Kowski at probably Comic Con was so I went to VeeCon. Still didn't really have a lot of friends. But then going to the national, or not the national, going to NYCC was when I really started to build some more V friends. And I remember sitting down with Kowski and just like his demeanor and how he lives life. I'm like, I need to be better friends with this guy. So I think I just love Kowski, and he's a great guy. So if you guys don't know Kowski, we're living under a rock. Um, but I remember talking to Ryan. I'm like, because he talked about how he has two daughters. And I'm like, I have three kids. We should do VeeDads. And he's like, yeah, okay. Or at least that's how I remember it. People might say it differently, or I'm not sure if he remembers it like that. But then we started like messaging a little bit about it and talking a little bit about it. And I think like in January we launched our spaces, and so we did that consistently up until like last week. So that's like I'm not good at math, but like 25 weeks maybe. And at some point, we talked about like what can we do more with VeeDads. We tried to do a weeknight show, and just like competing with like Josh and your wife and To the Moon and people like that. Just like it was hard to keep going with only like a couple of listeners. And we're like, okay, when aren't people doing stuff? And it's like they're not doing stuff there's not a lot of people streaming in the morning. And we're sort of like, should we do a morning show or something like that? And then Dom, who's been jumping in our spaces regularly, was like, hey, you guys should do the Daily Dad, or like check out the Daily Dad. And so then we finally got a copy. But going back a little bit, like when we were trying to start VeeDads, Scuba like registered all these VeeDads names, and we're like, Scuba, like we need some of these names. And I think he gave them to us.
He sniped all of the like URLs
Not the
or
URL.
handle.
Somebody owns a VeeDads URL. I don't know, but like yeah, the handles on Twitter and stuff. And so like, but he was, I think, looking out for us. I think Scuba, I love you. And so he gave us like a handle, but that's how. Like sometimes I'm like, why aren't we VeeDads? But we're VeeDads official on Twitter and VeeDads official on Twitch. And me and Ryan are like, oh, this book's good. Like maybe we can have some conversations around it. And then I think it was like, let's try it out. Because I'm really big on like, hey, let's try something. If it fails, it fails. But I think that like Ryan's really big on if I start something, I want to finish it. And so I think he's been like a really good like engine for like, let's be consistent. Because there's been times when I'm like, hey, let's do the show at 8 today, or maybe next week we should move it to 9, or like, no, 8:30, let's keep moving with it. And I think at some point, like I'm thinking like if I go on a cruise or we're both on a cruise at the same time, or he's doing something, I'm doing something, like we might have to like here and there do it at different times. But as of now, 8:30 a.m. every morning. And if we ever have to like deter from that, we'll let people know. But I think we're trying to do this show for as long as we can. But so I think that's where like what's gotten us to today. And I think one of the things that I can't remember if I heard it at VeeCon or read it in one of Gary's books, or maybe it's not even Gary related, but I'm going to attribute it to Gary. But through this whole journey, one of the things that I've read that really resonated with me is are you a content creator or are you a content consumer? And so I spend a lot of time consuming content. And I remember I was creating zero content. And I think that a lot more people need to make content because we all have like a different lens and view, and like being a dad's really important to me. So I'm like, why am I not creating content about this? And so that's something I think about a lot. Like with all the time that I'm spending consuming content, why not create my own content? And then even like doubling down on myself a little bit more. I think like for me, like the tagline for VeeDads is building father figures. But I always though think about like my own kids, like I'm not going to be here forever, but how cool would it be if they can look back and I'm almost like curating a conversation to my kids about parenting because, and I try to be very thoughtful about anything that I say about my kids because I don't want them to get, and like one day my daughter might be like, hey, my friends at school are listening to this and don't ever talk about me again. And like, I'd respect that.
Mm.
And, but I think that one day they'll be able to look at that and be like, oh my gosh, Dad, like you were talking about us daily. These are the things that you were struggling with and working on when they're parents one day or when I'm gone. And will that happen? I don't know. Like, for all we know, CrowdStrike could erase all the data from everything. Or I don't know. But that's one of the other, I think about how can I be a better dad now? How can we support each other as a parenting community? And then also um, something my kids can look back on when they're
I
old.
love that. And yeah, I think about that a lot. How, and Gary's mentioned this in his content, how we are the, you know, essentially like going to be the patriarchs and matriarchs of our family tree because everything that we have, like we're essentially the first generation where everything is digital, right? We
Mm-hmm.
have all of our pictures on our social media. We have hours of content. We have, and if you trace it back, like there's gonna be plenty of us. Uh, and for generations down in our tree. So I totally get that, and I'm jiving with that. As far as and thank you for sharing. Like it's very cool the origin of that. As far as the precipice for wanting to do that, you
Mm-hmm.
met Ryan, you did it, but like it takes a lot. Like it takes a lot of energy and planning and effort to do that. Like I'm curious, like what is it about VeeFriends, this community, this mission? Is it Gary? Is it some of the characters? Like why? Like put your flag in the ground here to say like I'm doing this. Like you could do a general dad's thing anywhere, parenting thing. I guess that's what I'm asking. Why here?
I think about this a lot, and I think the short answer is like me and Ryan wouldn't be friends if it wasn't for VeeFriends because we met through VeeFriends, so it wasn't, and we're in the VeeFriends community, and I love all like the collectible stuff with VeeFriends and all that and everything. But one of the things that I'm always thinking about is VeeFriends is so much, and I love the cards. I'm not like dissing the cards or anything like that, but I always think about how, like that's why I like VeeFam sessions so much too. Is VeeFriends is so much more than the cards and the pens and the stickers. But you have to have things out in the world to get people interested. And so I think that, and I think about how many characters are there? 251?
More now. Uh, to I don't know. Two.
Yeah,
I
two.
I have five different numbers in my head.
Because there's like the Hangout
Whatever
Hawks and
series
yeah.
one was plus 15.
Okay. And it's like there's that many characters to talk about in relation to like that's 250 topics right there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, and I think I bring this up to Ryan every now and then. Like, should we change your name? Should we be VeeDads? Should we change it to the Daily Dads? Because if you go to thedailydads.com, that's me and Ryan, but it takes you to the VeeDads official website. Um, that's still in progress, but there's some merch on there. Uh, but one of the things that we think about a lot is, you know, we're all bullish. We're bullish on VeeFriends, and especially with like the show coming out in the next, hopefully 3 or 4 months. I think a lot more parents are going to be Googling VeeFriends. And what if these parents out there stumble onto VeeDads and they're like, oh, there's already parents out there talking about like these characters and different things. Like I'm going to take a listen.
Mm.
And I think that same for VFam sessions. I think that um, we could be people in this space that people are looking to and representing VeeFriends, not officially, but or maybe
I
officially.
I know I get where you're going. I
Yeah.
think, and from where you guys are, I think there's a perfect storm brewing for these conversations to have so much spotlight on them. Because Gary's like this we're in meet in the middle season, right? If you're listening to this, it's July 2024. Last week Gary put out his first children's book, Meet in the Middle, and all of his, and if you, I don't know if you are subscribed to the pod, his pod,
Mm-hmm.
um, on YouTube, like all of the interviews are parenting
Mm-hmm.
focus now. he's hitting on those parenting influencers on Instagram and TikTok. Like he's mentioned for years that he's going to write a book called Perfectly
Perfectly
Parent.
parenting, Jinx Yomiko.
Yep. Like all signs are pointing towards like YouTube channel, Moonbug, like all signs are pointing towards like this is the direction it's going, and this is what's going to put VeeFriends into that next universe, right?
Mm-hmm.
This next stratosphere, and you guys are the unofficial spokespeople for that. Once you get into this umbrella, once you get through that front door of like, okay, VeeFriends, now what? And like we've both been around long enough to know that many people take that next few steps, 2, 3, 100 steps into this rabbit hole of this community that we're in. And so the topic plus the level, the depth of that you guys go, like I just think it's ripe for explosion and important conversations. So this I have a funny feeling like this is gonna be cool to look back on in a few years. So that's my unofficial push for you to just stay the course.
Oh, I
Um,
I need that encouragement because it's like we were talking about before, like it's hard, like sometimes.
it really is hard, and there's seasons like a lot of people don't know. Like last year, 2023, like we had twins. I sat on like 9 episodes for like 6 months. Like I just took like a hiatus of like 6 7 months. Like I didn't put out anything to the point where like I had a big interview that I actually did, and like they told me like please don't post this now. Like too much time has gone by.
Oh wow.
Like so like it is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But like that's just life. That's especially like if you're a parent and you're a working parent, and then you have all these other ambitions and hobbies too.
Mm-hmm.
Like you just can't, like Gary says, you just can't judge yourself. So, but yeah, I just think it's like such a cool niche that you guys have built out, and just it's so fitting. And the vibe is cool. Like you guys are, different personalities, but both just mesh well together.
Oh, thank you.
Um, and if you're listening, I hope I'm coming off of as big of a fanboy as I am hearing myself talk. So you you mentioned you worked at VeeCon too.
Mm-hmm.
You were there. Did you go to the national last year or no?
No, I it was
This
in Chicago, and I think after VCon. Oh, and that's when I was like in the process of quitting my job, um, and switching positions.
got
I
it.
didn't quit. I transferred departments and took a different role. um, so
We I just mentioned that this summer, fall, whenever they come out with it, VeeFriends is going to start their own YouTube kids programming. Obviously, I'm sure this could be a topic of what you guys talk about. Curious, what's missing, and you have 3 young kids as well. What's missing? And I don't need you to go. I mean, you could share as much or as little as what your kids consume, but
mhm.
what's missing from the kid content space right now? Uh, I'm just curious from your purview.
um, I've been listening to a lot of like the podcasts that you're talking about with Gary and like the parenting stuff. So my answer might be a little bit biased because I think Gary's talked about like what's missing a little bit, but he was been talking about how when these VeeFriends episodes or shows, or I don't know like what kind of clip they're going to come out at. Um, but it's like something fun for the kids, something to learn, but there's also going to be stuff for the parents to talk about. And I think that, or at least the kids, stuff that my kids are consuming, there's not like that much conversation to be had in regarding like values and attributes. And I mean, there's always things that can be taken away from these different, like minus like Inside Out 2. Like Inside Out 2, wow, crazy. Um, Especially with like my daughter who's like going on 8 and she's starting to feel all these different emotions. So I think that was like, could VeeFriends be that kind of content but on a larger scale? Because like my daughter right now is watching Unicorn Academy, and I mean maybe there's some like different things that can be peeled back. For my standpoint, I'm just like, oh, they're just cashing in on these little girls that love My Little Pony but feel they're too old for it, so now they have Unicorn Academy. Um, and then I think about like Coco Melon, which also is from Moonbug, and I think Coco Melon does a really good job of like getting kids to sing. But like, man, like those shows like hypnotize kids. Like, I think it's always funny. My son calls it Coco Melly, Coco Melly.
Yeah.
Um, and then my middle son, he's really into Mario. So like, if these shows can spur some like different conversations, almost like the conversations that we're trying to have on the Daily Dad every day, but with like more with like kids and their parents and stuff, I think that'd be like absolutely awesome. And then I also think about how could that be tied into video games? How could that be tied into board games? Um, to build up the IP, but also just like have some more of these like crucial conversations with our kids. Um, I was talking to Dom the other day from the Hype Foundation, and I think we talked about this on the Daily Dads too. It's just like with technology, these kids are growing up so much faster intellectually that as parents, we're not prepared to have some of these conversations so early on, whether it's
Yeah.
about how you feel about yourself, who you are as a person, um, and even like from the outside, like I think the first thing that jumps into mind is like keeping up with the Kardashians. I mean, like when I was 12, 13, 14, shows like that were on cable. Now these shows are like one click away for like my 7-year-old daughter, and she hasn't stumbled across that kind of content. But
She
so,
will.
yeah. Um, so that's why I just think we don't have time to slowly grow into parenting anymore. We have to be like greeting this stuff like head on. And I think that VeeFriends could possibly fill that void a little bit.
Mm. Yeah, that's really interesting points. Um, and I feel like the age that we're at, because we're similar in age. I'm 30s. What am I? I'm 37 now.
Oh man.
But like sometimes our only framework is like when I was 7 or when I was 10. Like naturally, you're gonna think back to that, and that's pre-internet,
Mm-hmm.
uh, which is seems
And
like
cell
light years,
phones.
light years ago. So it's so different, and it's interesting like to think like what the gap is going to be between like our kids and when they're our age now. Is the gap gonna be wider or is it gonna feel the same? I don't know. I guess we have too much on our plate to think about that. But yeah, like this whole parenting space obviously important, and like I feel like we're here for a reason with under this VeeFriends umbrella. Super interesting. The word that gets thrown around often here is community. We have a
Mm-hmm.
great community, the best community. A word that was thrown around in Web3. I'm curious, what does that word even mean to you, community?
I think about like I think it's more of like a mom phrase than like a dad phrase. Um,
Mm.
not that it can't be for both, but I don't hear a lot of guys going around saying like it takes a village. But I think like especially like being a nurse, like I've worked a lot more with women than I have with men. Um, but I think like it takes a village to raise these kids, and community to me almost means like a village. Like somebody's making the food, somebody's making the clothes, somebody's harvesting, somebody's hunting, somebody's watching the kids, and especially in like the United States, like I think we spend or like the American dream is so siloed, like you do it yourself. Um, and to me, like communities, like having those people that like you could like call up and be like, "Hey, I'm struggling right now. Can you help me?" Um, but also just people that you can like joke around with, be friends with, be open with, and like because I think, and especially like I think for me in particular, like I've moved around a lot, and so I think I've had a lot more quantity of relationships than quality of relationships. Yeah, I still talk to my high school friends and stuff like that, but like I'm sure there's people that like me that have like tried to talk to their friends about like VeeFriends, and it's like, what are you talking about? And it's like, oh well, they're NFTs. They get you access to this conference, and so I'm probably not like verbalizing it very well. But
I got you.
yeah, the thing that I like about Web3 though is like it doesn't matter where I am. Like I know I have my friends on Twitter, and we get together like it's like any other like community. They get together. Like I thought the coolest one was one of the nurses in my last job when I was a manager. She kept talking about this Golden Girls conference that she went to every year, and it was just like her and some friends that like really love
Wow,
Golden Girls. Um,
that's amazing.
yeah, and I think a lot of life lessons can probably be taken from Golden Girls. But thinking about like VeeFriends in particular, like yeah, there's like crypto and Web3 and that stuff, but there's also like there's these X number of characters that all have these different attributes, and I think all these different attributes are great conversations to be having, whether you have kids or not. And I just went really off tangent with that whole conversation for community. But community, it's really just connecting with people and having those people that are like your villager, your team.
I love that. Uh, Two more questions before we get to our last segment. Definitely want to be respectful of your time.
Oh, thank you.
The baseline here is for people to give more than they take, be kind. So much. I mean, we see it in our timeline all of the time, but a lot of it is behind closed doors
Mm.
or in DMs, behind the scenes. I'm curious, is there anyone, in our country now, a lot of people are blowing the whistle on things that people do that aren't necessarily great, or bad things. But I'm curious, is there anyone that you would like to blow the whistle on, or slash give roses to in a?
Um, man, I think there's just like
And that's an
so
unfair question. Every time I ask, I'm like, man, that's not nice.
because there's I think there's just like so many different like the first people that like come into my mind is Ryan, who I say thank you to all the time. I think about you, and I think about your wife, and I think about Josh Courage, and I think To the Moon Cards, just because you all are able to carry out these conversations, and you're like we just talked about community. You're growing the community. I always think about things like I think Gary talks about it sometimes, but I think about things in extremes. So every action that I take, it's either like every action I take, I'm either becoming a better dad or a worse dad. There's no in between. And like, yeah, like whether I drink like water or green tea, I don't think that matters to my parenting that much. But there's a lot of things that we do that we don't know the impact. And so I think about
Mhm.
from the perspective of like VeeFriends, like there's so many things that like we're doing that's either building the community or taking the community down. And Gary talks a lot about like um, candor, and I think that's like really hard because to me, like that's you have to be able to you can give the positive feedback, but you also have to do the constructive criticism, and I think that's really hard. So I think about like people in the community that I think are over because I'm an overly positive person. So when I think someone's coming off as overly negative, I have to ask myself like, okay, are they doing this like as clickbait stuff? Are they being like legitimate points? And so I really try to like dig into some of those spaces, tweets, conversations, and like really understand like the framework. So I'm just trying to think like, but then from the other perspective, there's people that just like so much like love and kindness, and like you notice when people like are gone for a while, like I haven't seen like I'm now that Tina is not doing her like daily photos of Gary anymore. I'm like Tina's not on my timeline as much, and Tina's like such like an awesome member of the community, and like I want to go find her and ask her how she's doing.
Mm.
I know Kowski isn't posting as much, and I love Kowski so much, and so um, definitely flowers to like Tina and Kowski for everything that they have and continue to do for the community. Um, like, kind of like blowing the whistle on. I can't there's some people that bother me because I think they're like, what is VeeFriends doing? What is this IP doing? Da, da, da. And I think it's like short sighted, but I think there's still like good conversations to have. Um, oh, there was one that was like really upset about like losing money on something, and he was like saying like really degrading things about like Gary and Rips, and I'm like, come on, dude, like that's not cool.
Yeah,
That was a
there's
long that was a while ago though.
there's always going to be a little bit of that, but 98% it's the Kowskis and Tinas
Hmm.
and Blazes and Ryans and everyone that's just injecting the positivity. You mentioned the eel, right? You're bringing the
Hmm.
energy, great energy. I love this is kind of this hour is like taking a different form, and I'm probably gonna have to listen to it back, but I like the energy. I like it's different, and
Oh,
I,
thanks,
I
man.
just can't put my finger on it right now in real time, but I like it. I don't mean that in a bad way at all. But what character do you Blaze need to spend more time with?
Oh man, I have like a bunch of cards. Like I'm trying not to be biased because I have like different cards on my the Brave Bison. Just kidding. Um, but
There's
I've
no
been
wrong answer.
yeah, I've been thinking about like the balance beetle a lot and like my poor relationship with time. Um, and I think like each day, I think our kids challenge us in different ways. And so like for me in particular, I think about my daughter's going to be 8 in September. In the first 7 years, 6 years of her life, I was on call 24/7, 365 in these jobs that I had. And I think about how different would her life have been. And I work, I have very few regrets. And I don't even think that I regret this. I'm thankful for the lesson that I'm learning right now. And that's like, how different would her life be if I could have been more present with her? And I think that's probably a question that a lot of parents ask, and some have the opportunity to do something different, and some don't. But I think you can always be more thoughtful for whatever position that you are in registrars. Um, and so I think it's just like balance beetle and like poor relationship with time. Because like one of the problems that I have right now is like my one son likes basketball, my one son likes soccer, and my daughter likes lacrosse, and it's like I can't go out and practice with them every day, and it's almost overwhelming to be like, you know what, I'm not going to do it at all. But so like, how can I find that time? Like, can they do it together? Or can I tape it separately? Like, they get it this week, the other one gets it that week.
Hmm.
Um, so I think it's just that, and then also being like a decisive duck. And I feel like I'm above average in being decisive compared to other people. But I think I can still be more of a decisive duck because I always go back to like thinking about like Netflix. Sometimes you spend more time going through Netflix and actually watching Netflix because you can't figure out what to do. And if it's more targeted, then it's like, no, I'm not going to ask, do you want to go swim and go to the park or get ice cream? I'm just going to pick for you, and then we can enjoy that much more time together. So,
Great answer. No one's ever said that, but it's so true.
so time,
So
beetle, duck.
great, great group right there.
Well, thank you.
Do you have 2 minutes to do one more segment?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Before we get to our last one, I just want to thank you again. Like I've had enough. I think I've sung enough of your praises, but I just want to thank
Well,
you again for
I
coming
have
on. You guys,
imposter syndrome because I just like I'm probably like halfway through the VFam sessions and just like how many like just pillars of the community, not just in VeeFriends, but like in the world too. So like it is like such an honor to be on the show, especially before VeeCon 3. So thank you for having me and inviting me up.
of course, of course. It's an honor. So thank you. Let be quick plugs. 8:30 a.m. every day. Where can we find the
Um,
Daily Dads?
we just Ryan's the tech guy for the most part, and I'm trying to be better techie. But we're live on Twitter now. But the number one thing is on Twitch, where you can interact with us. Ryan's good at viewing the chat. I'm usually in my car, at least for this season of summer right now, so I don't see the chat. But Twitch, 8:30 a.m. every morning, the Daily Dads. We're going through Ryan Holiday's book, The Daily Dad. And I didn't even get to talk about is like it's so awesome that Ryan Holiday is actually like a Vayner speaker. So I was like, all right, Gary, like you just gotta hook us up. Like that's one call. You can
Yeah,
call. He's in your phone.
I saw
um,
that.
so yeah, so Twitch and Twitter, and if you guys could follow us, that'd be great because we're trying to get to 500 followers on Twitter or X and 50 on Twitch, and we're jamming out. Or no, you're jamming. We're talking or daily dadding or drinking coffee. I don't know, tasting donuts if you ask my wife.
We'll get you there. We'll get you there. All right. Quick last segment here. It's called Micro Macro Spitfire. I'll
Okay,
throw a bunch of questions at you as fast as you can.
love it.
Here we go. This is Micro Macro Spitfire with the Blaze, Hirsch. All right, Blaze. Favorite teacher you had growing up and one reason why?
Mrs. Schweitzer, because she taught me to advocate for myself.
If all the social media platforms, let me rephrase this. If it was illegal to have more than one social media platform, which one would you keep? What was your favorite IP growing up?
Marvel.
A secret talent you have that most people don't know.
So I can, like, if you're drinking like a soda or a pop or wherever you live, if you take off the tab, you can actually, if you have like the correct anatomy, you can hook it under your finger and flick it. And I don't know anyone that can flick a pop tab farther than me.
It's a great one. What's your favorite physical piece of VeeCon, VeeFriends memorabilia?
I have one of the, it's not on my shelf anymore, but the golden flex and fox. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah.
That was probably a poor purchase on my part because I probably didn't have the money for it. But my 6-year-old is really into trophies, and so he calls it his VeeFriends trophy. And he came into my office the other day. He's like, "Dad, can I put that trophy in my room?" So it's just like sitting on his dresser, and he's always like getting it up and playing with it. I'm like, "Stop touching it," because I'm just like nervous he's gonna drop it and the head's gonna break off. But I think I'm past the like point of like I'm gonna flip this because I see how much joy he gets, and I think his favorite character is the Flex and Fox. So Flex and Fox, Gold Flex and
I
Fox.
love it. Favorite movie?
Oh man, that's a tough one. I love alien movies, so like the first thing that jumped in my head was like Aliens and Independence Day. Um, I can't say those are my favorite movies, but they're definitely like high up.
What was your best flip
Oh,
that you can remember?
so when I was 22, the Walking Dead TV show just came out, and I remember I'm like, I have to get a #1 issue of The Walking Dead. So I bought it for $400 and I graded it for like $50 a CGC. This is back in like 2000, 2011 probably. And it hit a 9.8 and I turned that like $500 into $2,000. So I think that's my like biggest flip. But I didn't know anything about taxes and I think I reported way too much and I didn't get that money back. So I think I screwed myself in the taxes part. But I think it's still my biggest flip today.
I love that. Um, this year in LA, in just a few weeks, is going to be the last promised VeeCon. So my question to you is, will there be a VeeCon next year in 2025? And if so, where will it be?
Oh man. I'm gonna go with I don't think that there's gonna be a VCon. What is it right now? 2024. I don't think there's gonna be a VCon in 2025. I think there'll be something in 2026, and I'm not sure it will or will not be called VCon. Um, because and that's my thoughts because it's Spitfire, and I won't elaborate.
Wine, beer, or coffee?
I'm drinking wine right now, but coffee. I couldn't live without coffee.
Favorite concert you've ever been to?
Oh wow. When I was a junior in college, I went to go see the Killers, and just like thinking back at like the time in my life, like 21 years old, didn't know anything about life, like seeing one of my favorite bands of all time, like just so much like nostalgia and like it was raining and pouring and just like it was like this outdoor venue and I think that like and I've gone to like hundreds of concerts. I used to go to concerts all the time. So, but I definitely think probably like Bonnaroo or the Killers for sure.
Oh, nice. When'd you go to Bonnaroo? What year?
Um, I want to say 2011 and 2012. I think. Did you go?
I did 1 year, oh 06,
Oh, nice.
a little earlier. But yeah, what a great experience. Gratitude Gorilla or Patient Pig?
Gratitude Gorilla.
Paper Hands Pony or the Koala?
Koala.
If you had the choice, would you rather have a 2-hour group dinner experience with Gary V, you and let's say 9 other people, or a 10-minute one-on-one?
10-minute one-on-one.
And lastly, if you could ask Gary one question he had to answer honestly, he's right here. What are you asking him?
Oh man, I always think about because I've actually never talked to Gary in person, and so I'm hoping to fix that at the national. Actually, um, what do I want to? He has to answer one question. Because I just think back to like the Daily Dads and VeeDads. Like, what advice would you have for us to keep driving forward? Just I would ask him for some encouragement around that. And like reading all his stuff, you always think to yourself, like, I bet he say this, that, or the other. And I always think he'd come with like, but you guys aren't doing this, and it'd be like, oh my gosh, you're right.
You're right,
Gary,
yep.
that's what's up, man.
You're absolutely right. Blaze, you're the man. Thanks so much for coming on. Really appreciate you, brother. And really looking forward to seeing you at VeeCon.
Absolutely. I'm very sad that I'm not going to be able to go to your show because I don't get until Friday morning, or no, your event. But I'm looking forward to connecting because you're on stage
absolutely.
on Friday.
Yeah, I don't know what day, but we'll see.
Oh, I can't
We'll
wait.
see if
It's going
they
to be
let me
awesome.
up there.
I'll hold up a.
Yeah, we'll see you soon, guys. Check out VeeDads. Check out Blaze. Take a selfie with them. Give them a hug. All the things. And we're gonna get your wife there next year, or whenever you think the next one will be.
All right. I'm down.
All right. Later, bud. See you, VeeCon.
Yep. Thank you so much for having me on too. It was awesome.